Hello, everybody. Not really sure who is hearing me, if anybody's hearing me right now, because there's always that moment of lag at the very beginning. And you can always tell if you ever see me here with my headphones on, that's because it's been a really busy week and I've just been talking, and talking until I can't really talk anymore. So it's always good in those instances to have the headset on because it just generally makes things a lot easier. So here we are for another episode of Nakshatra Talk, where you get to kind of ask some things about nakshatras or ask me about specific nakshatras, and I get to give you some talk in return about those things. So hello to all of you who are just joining in. You can feel free as you are joining in to post your questions over in the chat section, as I'm sure you can see where they are. Pardon me. There we go. So any questions you might have about nakshatras or specific nakshatras, please refrain as much as possible in asking me about nakshatras in your own particular birth chart. Okay, because really on a certain level, I'm only going to be able to give you general things. So if you are going to ask those things, just know that the information I'm going to give you is going to be very general, and it may not be completely 100% spot on because I don't know the rest of your particular horoscope. Okay. Revati Nakshatra, do you mean your moon in Revati Nakshatra in Pada 1? Is that what you're asking? I don't do a lot of work with sublords, people who are asking those questions. I have my own specific techniques that I use for nakshatras that tend to work out very accurately for me. So some of the things that you're asking about particular nakshatra techniques, I may not really work with. So I'm probably not the one to comment on those because I haven't really played around with them that much. Okay. So let's see any other questions that people might have on nakshatras, right? So the moon's in Purva Ashada Nakshatra today, as I am sure many of you know. Purva Ashada Nakshatra. Here's something really interesting. All the Venus nakshatras are intense nakshatras. They're called Ugra and Krura nakshatras. So they can be intense and very passionate. It's usually mentioned as being cruel and violent, but that's an extreme of it. Sometimes it can be that too. So there's always a lot of intensity with the experiences of the Venus nakshatras. So Purva Ashada can sometimes cause us to confront some experiences that feel humiliating in the first instance, but equally, once we face that truth that we may want to ignore in humility, we become strengthened and we're able to make some movement in regards to whatever is being shown to us. The person who keeps asking about sublords, I don't really work with sublords. So you're probably asking the wrong person. All right. So I can't really tell you because I don't really work with the sublords. Even though I'm aware of that technique, I haven't really played around with it because I do so many other things with nakshatras, like working with house cusp nakshatras, final dispositorship, working with Tarabala, doing things like working with house cusp nakshatras, tying nakshatras in with the Shayanati avastas and things like that. So I wouldn't really know what to tell you about the sublords, okay? Okay, so here are the types of questions that I will likely have to steer away from, just so you know. Virgo ascendant, Jupiter in Rohini, and Moon in Hasta, what does that show about spouse? I can't tell you everything about your spouse just based upon that on one level, right? In addition to that, I don't know the well-being of those planets. I don't know where those planets exactly are in terms of the degrees in your chart. I don't know anything about the Digbala in your chart. I don't know anything about Ishta and Kashta, which are a lot of the things I work with. So I would only be giving you a vast generalization on that. And that's not really fair for you. So if you ask other questions, I might be able to help you with that. How do I associate Rahu in Rohini? Well, a lot of it depends upon the well being of the moon, obviously. But when we come to understand Rohini Nakshatra, as we know, Rohini Nakshatra on many levels is all about the concept of growth. and how we are growing things. As a matter of fact, I'll read something to you from Tayatiriya Brahmana in regards to Rohini Nakshatra, which will give you some really good ideas about this particular nakshatra. I'm just bringing the text up on my screen. Share it with you. Bear with me for a moment. Okay, so here is the sutra that's connected with Rohini Nakshatra. The red growing of Prajapati is water from above and the receptacles of light from above. So the water from and the receptacles of light from below, sorry. Water from above relates to that nourishment which the universe can give us. It can give us water which helps to moisten and soothe things. And we below, as receptacles of sunlight, begin to grow through a combination of that water that's coming from the heavens. And if we are, this is going to sound kind of foofy, if we're in fertile soil, then our growth can be deeper and better. And so, what is fertile soil? Well, also Rohini Nakshatra is a mineral nakshatra. So, with mineral nakshatras, the focus is on trying to be strong within oneself, not being so concerned as to whether or not other people are going to support you in your growth, but instead look at how you can support yourself in your own individual growth. And as Rahu is there, it's a lot about exploring those areas of growth that you might have otherwise ignored, that you might have been blind to the potential of, and equally about which you might be a little bit hesitant about exploring. But when you begin to explore them, you may equally find yourself in a position where you become somewhat concerned about what others are saying about you, because there's a certain pride element associated with Rohini. And the idea is to go, well, even if nobody believes in what I'm doing and the steps that I'm taking in growing my path, I at least believe in myself. And again, that's just a generalization. I'd really need to know the rest of the horoscope. Okay. So let's read some other questions we've got here. By the way, now that we got a lot of people here, I am offering a 10% discount on all astrological services until 10 p.m. London time tonight. If you're in the States, just to give you an idea of the breakdown of that timing, at present, because we're not on daylight savings time here, 10 p.m. London time is 6 p.m. Eastern. It's 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, and 3 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, now let's look at some of these other questions. Oh, by the way, if you want to take advantage of that 10% discount, as I almost forgot, you need to visit this link, which I'm going to give you next, which is my services page. And you need to enter the discount code DIRECT, all in uppercase letters. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Yeah, that's a good question. Somebody's saying they're late jumping in. Difference between of the deity and for the deity. And that's a good question because, and I'm taking on board that you've probably read the translation of Tayatiriya Brahmana that I'm working with, right? So I'm going to touch on those two specific nakshatras that do that, right? Every other nakshatra, the sutra, says of the deity. Okay, like it will always say of Indra or of Prajapati, meaning Brahma, or of Vishnu, right? But in the instance of Punarvasu and Mula, it says for. Okay, so with Punarvasu, the sutra is the restoration of good for Aditi, which is the undivided, right? Is the wind from above and moisture from below. So Aditi being the undivided, the restoration of good for Aditi brings things back to a state of wholeness, right? And that's the process that's happening in Punarvasu. So that's happening for the undivided, right? And then when you go and you look at the other of those nakshatras, which is Mula Nakshatra, it says, pardon me, the uprootings for Nariti, which is the goddess of dissolution, right? So Nariti is all about breaking things apart. right? Breaking things apart. But that breaking apart, because Mula is also a Brahma nakshatra, also has a creative element to it as well. So let's touch on those two things. With Punarvasu nakshatra, what is happening is it's the stage in the evolutionary journey of the nakshatras, as I like to call it, where the soul has already become differentiated, right? And it begins to explore a little more of its interaction with consciousness in general. And as it's exploring that interaction with consciousness, a state of confusion begins to set in. The process of differentiation really begins to take its root within Kritika Nakshatra. And then you go through Rohini, the stage of growth. You go through Mrigashira, which is interacting with things, coming back and revitalizing oneself, making changes, making alterations. Then Ardra Nakshatra, which is developing a state of focus in terms of moving forward. And then Punarvasu Nakshatra, which is about gathering together one's energy again and becoming once again whole for the rest of one's journey, which will go through a lot of other steps, which I'll explain to you here in just a moment. For Nariti Nakshatra, though, for Mula Nakshatra, I meant to say, with Nariti is the association where it says for Nariti, it means that Nariti comes along to destroy the form that has been encased in its human bondage, so to speak, through making it recognize that its ego's not in control, and it begins to break down at the ego by making the ego recognize that, hey, your grip on things is really beginning to fall apart, and you're going to have to begin to explore another way. And so that's happening for Nariti. And one meaning of Nariti is without motion. So it's for the one who's without motion, so there can be motion again, right? That's my understanding of it, at least. Okay. And if you're interested in exploring the nakshatras more deeply, I have a class that's every Friday night from 9 to 10 p.m. London time to give you the breakdown of when that is. That's 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Mountain, and 2 p.m. Pacific, at least this week. And then next week, it kind of goes back an hour. Don't want to confuse you too much. And you can register either class by class, or you can register by semester, or you can register in full. If you register by semester or in full, you get all the previous class recordings and PowerPoints, and we'll talk about the esoteric concepts behind the nakshatras, which basically means when you have a planet in this nakshatra, what do you need to focus on in order to evolve with that particular planet? Okay, and here's a link to the registration page for that course. Okay, let's look at some other questions that we've got here. Do I ever look at relationship compatibility from the nakshatras? Yeah, I do look at relationship compatibility from the nakshatras. I'm always big on telling people, though, that if you really love someone, then you need to follow your heart, because you can see incompatibilities, but sometimes we're meant to encounter those incompatibilities and follow what our heart is saying about things. Okay. Somebody asked a question about the junction between Uttara Bhadrapada and Purva Bhadrapada. Can you explain what you mean? Do you mean how they're one nakshatra? Because I'm not really sure what you mean with that. How to determine dignity of a planet with respect to nakshatra. So I think what you're saying is how planets are dignified in a sign. How is a planet going to function in a nakshatra? There's a lot of different things you have to take into consideration. You have to take into consideration the strength of the planet itself. That's a combination of planetary dignity, which is also something else called deep tadyavastas. I should say planetary dignity comprise a part of deep tadyavastas. In addition to that, there's also the baladyavastas of the planet and the jagradadyavastas of the planet, looking at the planet Shadbala. And equally, a very big thing that ties into the well-being of the nakshatra itself is the planet that's connected to the nakshatra. That planet's Digbala plays a very big role, in addition to the planet's, dignity in deep tadyavasta, baladyavasta, and jagradadyavasta. Okay. And that's something that is included on one of my video courses, which is going to be released in the coming months. Okay. It's not on the present course that we're doing. We're just learning Nakshatra secrets on that course, but at the same time, it is on one of the other courses. All right, let's see what other questions we've got here. By the way, just to mention it once again, 10% discount on all consultations. One question, astrology session level 1, astrology session level 2, intensive consultation, all the way up to coaching packages, 10% discount until 10 p.m. tonight. If you use the discount code that I'm going to give you a moment at the link that I just entered into your browser, the discount code is direct because Mercury is stationing direct today. So hop on over to my astrological services page, share the love, and get a consultation in return. Okay, let's see what other questions we've got here. Okay, everybody, just to give you an idea, if you come on here with these things, and please don't take offense by me reading your question because I recognize it's innocent. What can I say about Cancer rising D1 chart with Scorpio rising D9 moon and Mars conjunction in D9 chart 8th house? I need to look at the entire horoscope with that, right? Just kind of giving a lot of details with that without me knowing the Baladi Avastas of the planets, Jagradati Avastas of the planets, Shadbala, and things like that. I'm just going to be telling you like half truths, right? I don't want to do that to you. Schedule a consultation with me, especially because there's a 10% discount. You'll learn all those things that you really want to ask and on a deeper level rather than wasting your time coming on and trying to get quick answers that will in turn turn out to be halfway accurate and leave you feeling somewhat empty. Okay, so it's best to take that approach, right? Let's see what else we've got. There's a lot of nakshatras that are related to the occult. Ashlesha is one of them. Shatabishak can be kind of that way. Some on some levels, Anuradha too. So a lot of it depends on the houses associated with the planets involved in it, and a lot of other different factors. Okay. I don't agree that any planet is bad in any nakshatra. The person who said Jupiter is said to be bad in Maga. A planet is not in itself bad or good in a nakshatra, right? It depends upon the planet itself. It depends upon the well-being of that planet. It depends upon the well-being of the nakshatra dispositor, all of those things. Okay. I don't necessarily relate Saturn to Shatabishak Nakshatra, so I don't really understand what you mean by that question. If you want to clarify, I'll try to answer though. Let's see what other questions we have here. Another way we can do this, another astrologer said it brings ancestry curses, that's why. No, I disagree with that. If K2 is in a sign where its dispositor is really strong and solid, then I don't see any reason why it would bring ancestry curses, right? I think curses become stronger the more you believe in them too, right? So I don't go into levels of saying anything brings a curse. I think the better way to approach it is understanding that there may be karma that's in your horoscope for you to work through. Focusing on that is going to turn what's a difficult placement into what feels like a better placement, right? Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. So name a nakshatra. Name a nakshatra and we'll talk about it a little bit. That's a good approach to take. Okay. Rahu in Swati Nakshatra, please. Okay. Well, what are you wanting to learn specifically about Rahu and Swati Nakshatra? While you're answering that, I'm going to go into giving you some of the answer of what you're wanting to talk about. Okay. So let's take a look at understanding how Rahu would behave in Swati Nakshatra. The individual's lifetime, this time around, would be one of needing some independence. They would likely have a need to wander and move around a lot. Okay. Their life may, dependent upon other factors that are involved in the horoscope, take on an odd quality to it with lots of inexplicable events happening in the individual's life, because Swati Nakshatra has a tendency to do that as well. The person's by their very nature is going to lead a very restless life, right? They may find themselves in a position where it's hard for them to settle in any one thing for a long period of time. Swati Nakshatra is just generally that way. A lot of it depends upon the house that Swati Nakshatra is connected to, that Rahu's connected to, in terms of where the unsettlement will be, in addition to where Rahu's dispositor is placed from Rahu and where it's placed from the ascendant. Okay. Pusha Nakshatra. Pusha Nakshatra is all about limitation. For some of us, limitation can be a good thing because we recognize the limit to which we can go before we're going to have problems, right? But it's a healthy thing to always push up against these limits. So Pusha Nakshatra can behave in one or two ways in regards to those limitations that it faces. One of those ways is to feel that their entire life is restricted and they're having to make sacrifices that they don't really feel like making in order to grow and nourish things in their lives that they really feel like growing. And another way to do it is to accept that there has to be a certain level of limitation for life to evolve in a constructive manner. So, a lot of the lesson with Pusha Nakshatra is about evolution and facing restrictions on that path and learning how to accept those things, learning how to make a willing sacrifice for the sake of something greater. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. By the way, I'll mention again 10% discount on all astrological services until 10 p.m. London time tonight. All you have to do is go to the page that I just entered. Yes, 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 the shiny link that you're now seeing in the comments section. Yes, all you have to do is go there, pick your astrological service, and enter the discount code in all uppercase letters, direct, and you will get a magical 10% discount off your astrological service. Okay? Now, let's see what else we've got here. Venus in Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra can be a very passionate planet on one level. They're going to expect a lot out of their relationships in general. This is a generalization, so there may be other factors that come into play with this, like where Saturn is, et cetera, but I'm just giving you a general response. They'll expect a lot out of their relationships, most likely. In addition to that, you can always rely on these people to be very truthful. When Saturn is perhaps in a weaker capacity or Venus is in a weaker capacity, the person may be prone to pointing out faults in the other person, right? But other things come into play too. All right. Nakshatras that repeat in a chart give emphasis on all those qualities if it appears 2 to 3 times, for example. So you mean if a person has 3 planets in a particular nakshatra, then yeah, the focus will be very deeply on that particular nakshatra. Okay. Mercury in Chitra nakshatra. Let's talk about Mercury in Chitra nakshatra with a strong Mars, right? Thinking constructively, thinking of good things that they want to do, things that would be great for them to do, ideas that would be good to have, and how to design those ideas and how to implement those ideas. But that's all in the mind. That's all in the mind. So the person has to recognize that I have to take these things from the mind and I have to put them into form. Now, when Mercury is in Chitra Nakshatra and it's a weaker Mars, then the person, when they begin to put those ideas into form, they begin to become somewhat disenchanted with the ideas that they had initially, and it creates a lot of problems for them. Okay. All right. So let's see what else we've got here. By the way, just briefly, and I'm going to mention this every once in a while. I hope I don't bore all of you with this terribly. But hey, I do this for a living, so, things going. So here's a link to my Nakshatra Secrets course. You can join us each week. If you want to pay on a per week basis, it's $40 per class. If you want to pay in full, it works out to be much less than that. If you want to register for the course in entirety, like almost half of that, and nearly the same with the semester option. What is the best place to get your Vedic horoscope? Do you mean for someone to read your Vedic horoscope? Well, I'll kind of do that, and go, hey, you could always come to to my site and do that and book on my end, right? And I'd be happy to look at your chart too. Where is the best place for you to order my consultation? The best place for you to order my consultation is through my services page, which I'm going to give you a link to right now. It's a shortened link to make it easier for you. That's the link to my astrological services page. I have a discount on all services until 10 p.m. London time tonight. That's 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Mountain, 3 p.m. Pacific. And all you have to do is enter the discount code direct. Okay. Yeah, but you have to recognize that your question way up there on Rahu and Ketu is way up there at this point. So can you copy and paste it for me? And if it is something that I can address for you in a manner that would give you helpful and constructive information, I definitely will. But obviously, if I have to scroll all the way up the page in order to find it, it's going to make everybody else who's here watching have to wait, right? So if you could copy and paste it, it would be great. Okay. But Kishore Blue, you said I've been there. That's the best place to go. And if you order there, there's a 10% discount using the code I gave you. Mercury and Ashlesha Nakshatra. Before I go into that, let's talk about the concepts of planets in the nakshatras with which they're associated. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about the sorry, I got distracted by somebody's question. Let's talk about the concepts of planets as they're connected to nakshatras. Planets are connected to nakshatras for the sake of creating dashas, right? So within Vimshotri dasha, Mercury would be connected to Ashlesha. Within Vimshotri dasha, Maga would be connected to Ketu. That's so we know when the moon is in a specific nakshatra, what dasha the person will enter life in. Okay, so that's the first understanding of planets' connection to nakshatras. In essence, they're not really dispositors. We call them dispositors because it's an easy way to refer to them. What they actually are is they kind of function more like emissaries. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So the well-being of that planet obviously plays a role. In terms of emissary, if you don't understand that word, is a messenger. So think in medieval times, the king would tell their messenger to go take a message to a certain village, right? If that messenger was really sharp, astute, healthy, they would be able to get to the other village or the other kingdom with no problem, give the message to the other king with no problem, and everything would come across clearly. Now, if that messenger happened to be a dullard, an idiot, and was very unhealthy, they, would have lots of accidents along the way, exhaust themselves, get there, not be very bright in the first place, and transmit a much weaker message, right? So that's how the planets connected to nakshatras affect the well-being of the nakshatra. Okay, so planets in their own connected nakshatras don't function the same way as planets in their own sign. It's not that they automatically become strengthened by being in their own nakshatra. That's not the case. Okay, it can be weak. It can be a weak planet in its own nakshatra, and it's going to create some problems for that. It doesn't just get strengthened by being in its own nakshatra. So Mercury in Ashlesha nakshatra will be very assertive in its thought processes, will get very fascinated by things, very want to explore things to the nth degree, in some ways very similar to what Mula would be like in that capacity. So they want to go very deeply with things. If there is a strong Mercury, they'll be able to kind of stay grounded while they do that. If there's a weak Mercury, they get drawn in by their thought processes to a very deep extent and somewhat obsessed about things. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we've got here that I can answer. Okay. How is Rahu Ketu transit going to be for Leo ascendant, Rahu and Leo, Ketu and fifth, who are already undergoing a Rahu Mahadasha? Thanks for your response in advance. The idea here, everybody, just so you know, is to not come here to get your horoscope read. That's not what I'm here to do. Okay, because me just knowing your Rahu and Ketu position and your ascendant is, pardon my language, is not going to give you diddly squat, really. I'm just going to be able to give you very generalized information, and you'll go, oh, this astrologer said that this transit was going to be this way, and it was completely opposite. That's because I don't know the rest of your horoscope, you see? So that's why I don't go into questions like that, because it only gives you a generalization. If you want to know those things, please take the time for your own well-being to go to my website and schedule a consultation if you really want that information, okay? So sorry I couldn't answer your question, but it just would not really help you for me to give you a generalization. Okay. I can tell you, some general things, Rahu in Gemini and K2 in Sagittarius, right? You're gonna likely find yourself wanting validation for following other people's, I would say on a certain level, other people's dictates rather than following your own inspiration. So maybe some things you need to take a look at are the need that you might have inside of yourself for validation, for fitting within certain guidelines, and how you might be able to recognize that even though it's good perhaps from time to time to follow certain rules in order to have success, it can also be good to listen to your inspiration and let your inspiration guide you and find a balance between those two things. So Rahu is going to pull you more in the direction of going, if I want to follow those things that I aspire to, if I want to achieve my goals, then I have to follow rules. So then when I follow those rules, I begin to want recognition that I have followed the rules. And so it's about not expecting that recognition at all. Okay, that's just an easy thing. I can find free charts on Google for Western natal charts. These charts are like trying to find a unicorn. Apps in Google look like they'd help. They give no results. Okay. I don't really understand why you're saying that, but you can feel free to state it again, right? Let's see what else we've got here. Okay, let's see any other questions that we might have. Da, da, da. Ardra is a dreaded nakshatra. I think that people tend to listen. All right, let me kind of phrase it to you this way, right? It's very easy for astrologers who want you to come to them for a consultation to tell you that something is really bad in your chart, right? Because if they tell you something's really bad, then you're going to go to them for a consultation to figure out how to make that better. There are no bad nakshatras, as I said earlier. And there's not necessarily any good nakshatras. A lot of it relates to the well-being of the planets that are in those nakshatras and the well-being of the planet that's associated with that nakshatra. Now, with Ardra nakshatra, it can be a very intense nakshatra, and the person can become so passionately focused on something to the extent that they miss other things in their life. And when things happen, so, for instance, let's say you're focusing on your career, right? Like you've got this connection with your 10th house in Ardra Nakshatra, and you become really focused on your career and you put a lot of effort towards it. Meanwhile, other things in your environment are falling apart, like, you're either being too ambitious at work or your attention's not given to your children, whatever the case might be. And then when you notice those things that you've been kind of ignoring, it like brings about somewhat of an emotional cleansing for you. So I think that's why people kind of give Ardra Nakshatra a bad reputation. But again, no nakshatra in and of itself is bad or good. Yeah, exactly. The person per Marshall said, my son is in Ardra and I'm okay. Yes, exactly. Right. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. Yeah, Ardra can get stormy to say the least. Exactly. But it's not bad, right? Okay. Which nakshatra has a connection to working with animals? Two. Revati nakshatra definitely has a connection to working with animals like cats and dogs. So does Uttara Falguni nakshatra. Okay, they're both nakshatras that, with career factors associated with them, can make a person become more predisposed to taking up veterinary work. Okay, pardon me, everyone. Rahu in Anuradha nakshatra with a weak Saturn, the person can be, as they're exploring and trying to develop their karmic path in this lifetime, they can become somewhat predisposed to not develop their own potential, okay, to not find their own strength, to, on a certain level, look for perhaps other people to nourish their strength rather than nourishing their own strength as individuals. It's a plant nakshatra, so they will sometimes, as they're not in their own strength, they will sometimes adapt for certain situations, and adapt too much, give too much of their own power away, to the extent that they have no good, strong sense of boundaries. Okay. So a lot of Rahu placed in that position would be about developing a healthy sense of boundaries, so that in your interactions with others, you're recognizing your own potential and what you offer to the equation. You're recognizing the other person's potential and what they offer to the equation, but you're not so caught up in other that you miss yourself. Anuradha nakshatra is, on a very deep level, about discovering potential. Anuradha nakshatra and um, Shatabhishak nakshatra are connected on a certain level. Shatabhishak nakshatra is often connected to Varuna. Varuna tends to cover things over in the night that Mitra, who's associated with Anuradha nakshatra, reveals during the day. So if you take that covering over during the night, that's getting lost in darkness. Revealing during the day is about discovering your potential. I mentioned Swati nakshatra already quite a lot. You might have to go back and watch things because I mentioned it a lot. I don't want to, I don't want to mention it, over and over again. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So if you're interested until 10 p.m. London time tonight, dun, 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 all astrological consultations, 10% discount. If you visit the link I'm entering into your window now, and you just have to enter the discount code direct, because Mercury's direct today, and you'll get a 10% discount on the consultation that you schedule. So why are you staying here talking to me? Go on over to the astrological services page. There we go. Let's see what else we've got. Can you acquire prosperity with Rahu and Ketu in your natal charts? If Rahu and Ketu are on a path that develop prosperity in your chart, you can. You can't just say because it would be in a certain house. It depends upon the well-being of the planets dispositing Rahu, also the well-being of the planets dispositing Rahu and Ketu in your Hora and your Chatratamsha chart, if you're talking about financial prosperity. Okay. Abhijit Nakshatra is just part, in my opinion, of Uttara Ashada Nakshatra. Okay. Let's see what else we've got here. I don't work with separating the two. How do we activate nakshatras? You recognize what that nakshatra is all about in your life, and you do the work to resolve the karma that's associated with it. That's the best way to activate nakshatras. It's not necessarily like there's a magical formula, but if you mean things to help you to focus on the lesson with the nakshatras, a really good thing to do is to get a version of the Tayatiriya Brahmana, right, that's been recently translated. Read over it. Really, like with the planet that you've got in a certain nakshatra, really meditate on the sutra connected with that nakshatra. Let it reveal things to you over time. Keep working with it. It will begin to do work for you on an inner level that helps you to understand what you're needing to focus your attention on. Or if you really want to, you can also come to my Esoteric Nakshatra Secrets class, and I can give you the very same information, right? And there's a link to that. Okay, I can probably hang around another 5 minutes, everybody. It's replica. What do you mean it's replica? I'm not sure what you mean. Okay. Do you mean in terms of Abhijit Nakshatra being Anuttada Ashada? Yes. That's what I think, at least. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. I did a lot of talking on Anuradha Nakshatra just a moment ago. Okay. You always get some smart guys got to come in here and try to throw things into the loop because they're, just really bored and they have to try to disturb other people. Okay? All right. Let's see what else we've got. Let's see. I may be able to take one or two more questions. Let's see what we've got here that I can do. Chitra is associated what? What do you mean Chitra is associated what? I'm not really sure what you mean. Please, everybody, when you type your questions, I know most of you are probably on your phones, but please try to explain what you mean because I don't always understand what you mean when you just kind of say Chitra is associated with what. Okay. Uncertainty is shown in by Chitra. I still don't understand. Okay. Let's see if I can find one or two more questions. K2 and Barani. I scrolled up and I found somebody's K2 and Barani post. K2 and Barani people can be so accustomed to having to go through hardship and having to exercise restraint and discipline that on one level that can be good, but they have a tendency to think that everything in their life on a certain level is going to have to be pained or difficult if they want to achieve something with it, right? So it's about learning how to overcome that stuck energy around thinking that everything has to be difficult in order for there to be success. Okay. There's no, everybody, I've probably said this, please pardon me, I'm not getting worked up, but I've probably said this about 20 times. There's no benefic or malefic nakshatras. Nakshatras just grow the planets that are placed in them. They're not necessarily bad. They're not necessarily good. As a matter of fact, if you want to give them a quality, they can only be good because they're about evolving the planet. You may have a difficult experience with them because you need to have a karmic awakening about the planet that's in that particular nakshatra. But recognize there's not a benefic nakshatra. Okay? Don't try to look at nakshatras in the same light as signs. There's something completely different, right? Oh, it's okay. You don't have to apologize. It's just, kind of helping people to understand these things, right? Because a lot of people try to use nakshatras just like signs. They're different than signs. They're completely different. Okay. All right. That's going to do it for today, everybody. If you're interested in scheduling with me and you want that discount, which I know you do, ha ha ha, you can go to the link, which I'm going to enter here. Okay. And you can enter the discount code in all uppercase letters direct. And I do hope you schedule with me. And if you're interested in learning more about the nakshatras, I have an esoteric nakshatra secrets course that's going on weekly. You can jump on board with that at any time. And while you're there also feel free to explore my other courses that are about a weekend, but you can still join if you want to join. Okay. Thanks a lot for coming, everybody. And I will talk to you the next time I have an opportunity to come on. Bye now.